Record. Okay, well, hello YouTube. I want to begin this by saying that I have a big announcement. Myself and my friend Jacques are setting up a podcast, which is going to be on another channel. It's called the Possible Objects Podcast. We're doing that together. It hasn't been released yet, but that's coming out. So this is just a kind of teaser to get you all excited about this thing that's coming in the future. It's going
Yeah,
to
and
be
I really like how we're getting people excited when we've done the polling and 99% of Kane's audience hates me.
yeah, but
So
it's look, the podcast is we're going to talk about philosophy. We've got some interviews. We're talking about art. It's not just about philosophy. There's loads of stuff that's going to happen on this podcast. It's really going to be very cool.
right.
And
It's a lot
so
it's a lot weirder than the stuff on Kane's channel. It's like if you
right,
like that red dot video that Kane made, then you'll like our podcast, I think.
right. um,
Right.
so I guess that's what we need to say about that, right? I mean, there will be more information about that coming soon, right? That will come soon. Um, but
Right. And the first interview that we ever did was with a man whose name is Peter Mancock.
Pete Mandingus, yeah,
Right. Yeah. So if anybody knows their philosophy of mind, they're probably familiar with
Pete Manwang,
Pete
yeah,
Pete Extreme Boner or whatever his name is. Right? That was his name, Pete Extreme Boner, wasn't it?
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, right.
um,
Okay.
cool. But so today we're going to talk about a couple of articles about science. I mean, this kind of follows from the video I recently uploaded on anti-science. We're going to look now at some defenses of science. There's a couple of articles that Jack's found, and we're just going to talk about them. And apparently, this first article is called "Is Science Faith-Based?" and it's by a guy who I'm told is known for his work debunking moon landing conspiracy theories. So,
All right.
like, yeah, that's
Badastronomy.com. His name is Phil Plate. Like, I'm going to eat food off a plate. I think his
nice.
last name's Plate. What do you
Why
think?
why do people care about like why do people get so mad about the moon landing conspiracy stuff? I don't I mean who cares? Who cares whether or not we went to the moon? It just seems like it's weird how people get like so fired up about refuting those conspiracies because I feel like even if that's so what? What's
Oh,
so
yeah.
special
Yeah,
about
it gets me really fired up.
right.
Real fired up. I don't know if you heard how fired up I just was.
Yeah.
um, right.
That was
Okay.
a wet one. That sounded like it'd be putting out fires. Like, what?
Right. I mean, like, look, you're the one who shits their pants in the middle of the country in England. So.
That's true. That actually did happen. Yeah, that's the story for the
Right.
Possible Objects podcast. Actually,
Right. So if
we'll
you listen
tease
to that
people with that.
podcast, you'll hear the story of how Kane shit his pants on a country road. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, so this is I think maybe we could even title this video "Is Science Faith-Based?" We'll
yeah,
just take
yeah.
let's steal this guy's title.
Okay. So, is
Um
science faith-based? Do you want to get into the article? Should I
yes,
start
yes,
reading it?
you can read through and then I guess we'll make some commentary on it.
Okay. So, is science faith-based? No. Oh, you want details? Okay then. If you read any anti science screeds, at some point or another, most will claim that science is based on faith just as much as a religion is. For example, the horrific Answers in Genesis website has this to say about science. Um, shall I quote the Answers in Genesis? So it says, much of the problem stems from the differing starting points of our divergence with Darwinists. Everyone, scientist or not, must start their quests for knowledge with some unprovable axiom, some a priori belief on which they sort through experience and deduce other truths. This starting point, whatever it is, can only be accepted by faith. Eventually, in each belief system, there must be something unprovable. There must be some unprovable presupposed foundation for reasoning, since an infinite regression is impossible. Um, so I guess that's the challenge, right? And I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say about that.
Um No, except to say, I mean, like, uh, so far the creepy Answers in Genesis website is correct. Yeah, right. So it's like, yeah, that is true. That's what's going to happen. Yeah, but then this guy doesn't. I don't know. He doesn't seem to agree. So let's see.
Okay, then. So he says, this is completely wrong. It shows, unsurprisingly, an utter misunderstanding of how science works. Science is not faith based, and here's why. The
Wait.
science.
Okay. So
Right.
stop for a second.
Yeah.
Right away, he seems to not understand that it doesn't seem like the Answers in Genesis people are even talking about science. Like it seems like they're talking about like philosophical, like epistemic, like the epistemic foundations people have. It doesn't seem like they're talking about so meaning like they're making a philosophical point, and then this guy's going like, well, they just don't understand how science works. But like what the whole point is that science is just one methodology amongst many. Like that's the whole point. Like I don't understand. Like I don't know what that. I don't understand what. So even before he starts talking, I'm not sure how explaining science further would do anything. It's like for the epistemic problem.
Well, I assume he's going to tell me. I mean, I haven't actually read this article. I should say I'm reading this for the first time now. I like so,
Right.
but I'm assuming he's going to give me some explanation for why it is that science does not start with some unprovable axiom, some a priori belief on which they sort through experience and deduce other truths. I'm assuming he's about to give an explanation for why that's not the case.
What's hilarious is because I've read the article,
Right.
he's about to do the exact opposite thing. But
Okay.
okay.
So
Okay, keep going.
science is not faith based, and here's why. The scientific method makes one assumption, and one assumption only. The universe obeys a set of rules. That's it.
Wait, stop.
So
Okay, stop.
if
Stop, stop,
okay,
stop, stop,
I
stop,
am
stop,
stopping. I
stop.
was about to give a
Wait,
commentary, but okay.
right, wait. Okay, sorry, I don't want to interrupt your commentary. I was just going to say the idea that it only makes one assumption is the craziest. It's one of the craziest statements ever made. That it only makes a single assumption. But okay, yeah, you go.
Well, actually, I mean, I suppose if people want more detail on that, they could watch our problem of the criterion video, and they'll maybe have a sense of because I mean, go and watch more of our videos, right? But no, I mean, so I mean, maybe I shouldn't be judging this article before I've actually read the whole thing, but who cares? Yeah, I mean, it's a bit strange to set this up where you're setting it up by saying, okay, somebody's making some sort of criticism of science, where the criticism is that it's based on some assumption or presupposition. Now, what he's now saying is science makes one assumption and one assumption only, which is that the universe obeys a set of rules. But of course, even if that's true, that is apparently still an assumption. But it's interesting actually that he says
it's interesting how that follows him saying this is completely wrong, and then he goes on to grant the main thing they said.
yeah.
Like what? Like what is he doing? Like he says this is completely wrong, and then he says how it's 100% right. That like in the next sentence, he does it in two sentences. In one sentence, he says they're wrong, and in the next sentence, he says exactly what they said. Like what?
Yeah, that is a bit strange. The other thing that's a bit strange, though, is the assumption that he's chosen to attribute to science, because I'm not sure I would say that science makes the assumption that the universe obeys a set of rules. That seems quite strange to me. I mean, like okay, so it's common enough to think of the sciences as discovering laws, and like maybe things in the universe are the behavior of things in the universe is governed by laws. Although not every science seems to involve the discovery of laws. Like it's not just so in biology, for instance. Biology doesn't seem to uncover law-like generalizations in the way that a science like physics does. But of course, it's not clear that you should take laws to be rules. Like talking about the universe obeying a set of rules is like that just seems that seems a bit too anthropomorphized. So it's just odd that he's chosen that as his assumption that he thinks science is based on. But I would add, I
Right.
mean, from my point of view, I just don't see why. we have to make the assumption that anything is obeying rules or laws or anything like that. You can take rules or laws as being generalizations of or sort of as identifying regularities in events. You don't have to assume that there are these like independent laws that like govern events. That seems like a pretty substantive metaphysical assumption that actually I don't think science needs to make that. So
It doesn't even seem like it doesn't seem like to get regularities at all that the regularities need to be derivative of some rule at all. Like why would I ever need a rule or a law to notice a regularity? And this is interesting, this point that you bring up about biology, because this is also something that came to mind like the first time I read it, was just like how like this seems to so later in the article he's going to make the claim that science is basically everything that we ever do. But what's hilarious is in this first claim, he narrows science to basically like exclude a lot of the sciences. Like if you're gonna say that they make that one particular assumption, it seems like you're saying that all science is like maybe physics or something. But it's just kind of weird. It seems like, so he's narrowed the scope of the sciences because it's just obvious that it's not applicable in a field like biology, where there's a lot kind of just cooler, kind of more interesting stuff going on that doesn't really collapse. I mean, I don't know if the audience is aware of this, but like there's a kind of problem even like using things like certain theoretical virtues like Occam's razor in biology. Like it seems like maybe that virtue kind of sucks in biology. So like, it's so it's not clear that science is this like homogenized thing that can always be analogized to physics. Like,
right.
So it's weird. Also, his claim that science only makes one assumption is just completely insane. That's not true. Science makes like probably like 1,000 different assumptions that are obvious. I mean, so science doesn't just think that it's not going to just make a claim that the universe obeys a set of rules. It's also going to make a claim that sense experience is reliable. Like that your sense experience can be dependent upon. It's also going to make.
You could in principle have a view where you say that there's a universe that obeys a set of rules, but that sense experience is just completely misleading, and so we have no idea what's going on in that universe that's obeying a set of rules.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And then there's another thing too, where you don't have to. So science doesn't just assume that senses are reliable. Science also assumes that consensus sense experience is what is good. So meaning that what's ultimately good is that like when we get this consensus of people's sense experiences. So that's a whole different assumption than just assuming that my sense experience is reliable. So to do science, I have to assume my sense experience is reliable, but then I have to make an additional assumption that the consensus, when we all get together and talk about it, that's preferable to just what I see. So like that's another one. And we could keep. I mean, if we sat here and wrote them all down, we could probably get up to 1,000 if we spent a month on it. Like, I mean, like there's so many things that are assumed. That's just and then there's a weird relationship with the assumptions made by mathematics. So like, yeah, they can, like science doesn't have to ascribe to something like Platonism, but it does seem like it leeches off of it, like parasitically is attached to the kind of axioms that underlie mathematics. So, and many assumptions that are mathematical in nature. So then if you go through that list, there's another 100 you can tack on. It's like this shit. So I don't know where this guy got the idea that there's only one. That's just that just on its face is just obviously just made up. Like, what is he talking about? Where did he get? I mean, can you? I mean, actually, because I mean, you're way more educated in this stuff than me. But can you just maybe comment a little bit on this idea that science only makes one assumption? Like,
Well, that's not a view that I've encountered um, in my work and research on this particular topic. So
right, because the
there's not
idea, because
really.
that opinion's incredibly dumb. Like, it's an incredibly dumb opinion that there's only
I
one
think that
assumption.
what I mean, like I was expecting the article to go in the direction of arguing that it doesn't make any assumptions, and I think that there might be like there are maybe ways of arguing for that sort of position. It's very strange to say that it makes one assumption, especially given that the assumption in question is that it obeys a set of rules. That seems like a strange choice for the assumption it supposedly makes. But
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean, I think that whoever's making the argument for the position that it doesn't make any assumption, if that was really true, then it wouldn't even be assuming anything about its own methodology, and therefore, basically, everything would be science, and it would just become trivial. Because if you're not putting any parameters on the activity that we call science, then just everything counts as it.
well,
So then, what?
I mean, maybe one way to think about this is that like so one thing you could say is it's just a mistake to think of something like science as making assumptions as being the kind of thing that could make assumptions, right? Like it's people that make assumptions, and like one of the things that we do is we perform various activities that we've chosen to label science, but like it's not science that makes assumptions. People make assumptions, and different scientists are going to make all sorts of different assumptions. Like there probably are some scientists who assume that the universe obeys a set of rules, and maybe that influences their scientific work. But we don't have to take it that like that is an assumption of science. In the same way, when you think about something like the reliability of sense experience. So one sort of line that people who are, I guess, naturalistically inclined can take is to say, the thing is with the claim about the reliability of sense experience is that it might be the case that when we do empirical work, we end up gathering data which actually undermines this assumption. So I guess it's like you sort of make an assumption, but it's a fallibilistic assumption, and it could be refuted. And in fact, it maybe like has been refuted in significant respects, because we might think that color, for example, maybe the evidence we've gathered about the nature of color actually shows us that our color perception is just completely unreliable. And so I mean that's a pretty significant respect in which our sensory data is just unreliable. Like maybe there is no color, maybe color is systematically misleading. And that could happen for that could happen for all of our perception, in which case the claim that sense experience is unreliable gets thrown out. And I mean, obviously it's not obvious, like where you go from there, how you do science if sense experience is thrown out is not at all clear, but science could have that result, right?
Right. I mean, that still doesn't have the ring to me of science not having any assumptions at all. It it's
Well, can
like,
I maybe put it so I think that there's different types of assumptions, right? And so there are
okay.
assumptions that we might make as like so what with this quote that from the answers in Genesis, they talk about like an unprovable axiom, an a priori belief. It's presupposed as a foundation for reasoning. So you might make an assumption and you invest it with this like kind of epistemic significance, right? Or you might make an assumption where it's literally just like, okay, I'm just gonna kind of like take a stab in the dark. I'm just gonna start with this because I don't really know where else to start. So I'll just hey, like this is an assumption, and I don't really know whether this is true. Well, let's just start here, and we'll see if I can build a coherent web of belief using this, or you know, so like some assumptions you're kind of a dogmatist about them, and you're like, no, this is the foundation of reasoning. This can't be thrown out. And then other assumptions you might be willing to let them go in the course of inquiry, right?
I mean, wouldn't you be like a dogmatist about revisionism? So
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that's true.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's all people just assume shit. Like what? um, yeah. So okay, let's not get hung up on this point. Let's keep reading the article.
Okay, then. So, the universe obeys a set of rules. That's it. There is one corollary, and that is that if the universe follows these rules, then those rules can be deduced by observing the way the universe behaves. Wait, what? Why would that be? So he says, if the universe follows these rules, then those rules can be deduced by observing the way the universe behaves. This follows naturally. If it obeys the rules, then the rules must be revealed by that behavior. Wait, what? Surely something. So, I mean, just as a like, I mean, something could follow a certain set of rules where, like, we've literally constructed the system so that the behavior is misleading with respect to the rules that might be attributed to it. So, like, you could construct a system which the way that somebody would, where like we're trying to mislead people, we're trying to deceive people. So you could construct a system which is like following a certain set of rules, but then that's not the rules that interpreters would like apply to the system. In fact, I mean, I guess this like happens when human beings lie and deceive to each other, doesn't it? So I don't really see why you would assume that like just because the universe is following certain
Yeah,
rules
there's a
that the rules
famous
are
Einstein
revealed.
quote. It's once again funny because this is this guy's area of specialty that he doesn't know these things. But there's a famous Einstein quote about him saying that the most important question is whether the universe is favorable. and by and what he means by whether the universe is favorable, like the context is, does the universe tell us the truth? Like and he said that he actually said that that's the most important question that there is. So this guy's just taking it on faith, like that the universe is favorable and that it does tell you the truth.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
I don't know why he would.
for any, there's actually I think a simpler a way of making this point, which is just look for any behavior, there's an infinite number of rules that you could take it that behavior is like evincing, right? So for any kind of set of data that you have, you can come up with an infinite number of rules that would fit that data. So, I mean, like that's just a sort of logical point about underdetermination of theory. So, I mean, you certainly aren't going to be able to deduce the rules that the universe is following from the way the universe behaves.
All right, let's keep going.
Okay. So, okay, a simple example. We see objects going around the sun. The motion appears to follow some rules. The orbits are. We don't actually see objects going around the sun. Like, nobody's ever
Yeah.
actually seen that. You don't see that. Would you say that you see objects going around? I mean, I guess so, but like, if we see objects going around the sun, like that's an observation that is like very, very
Actually,
thoroughly theory laden.
even an astronomer looking through a telescope doesn't actually see objects go completely around the sun. They make an inference from things they see in the telescope and then models that display that. But it's not something that's like actually see, like maybe you could have a video from a satellite over time that rotate, but that wouldn't actually be going around. Well, because that has to orbit. So I'm trying to think like there would never be. I don't think there would ever be a direct perception
Maybe
of things.
you could like stand outside the solar system and observe it like from out. Although
Have we
that would be
done that?
difficult. I mean, I don't think. Well, no, and
Yeah.
actually, I think that it would probably require instrumentation to detect the planets because I mean they would be invisible to the naked eye if you were far enough away that you could like see the sun and the planets. So yeah, I don't think you could ever actually see stuff going around the sun.
Right.
Not in
Yeah.
like
So
not in the way that I see my computer in front of me, at least.
right. Yeah. So going back to like another assumption that science makes is it also makes kind of assumptions about the way that you can piece perception together, and that you actually are able to do that somehow, and that works. But yeah, we could just keep adding that list. But all right, let's keep
So,
going. Yeah. So
uh,
it's kind of funny that he's saying a thing where the point here is he's basically saying a thing that people don't even perceive. That's not even something that people have in their perception. But he's just saying it as if though everybody's walking around seeing things rotate around the sun. That's like what? Like as if though people are living like 365 days in like a minute or something. They just see it. Like what?
so, so we see objects going around the sun. The motion appears to follow some rules. The orbits are conic sections, ellipses, circles, parabolas, hyperbolas. The objects move faster when they are closer to the sun. If they move too quickly, they can escape forever, and so on. From these observations, we can apply mathematical equations to describe these motions, and then use the math to predict where a given object will be at some future date. Guess what? It works. It works so well that we can shoot probes at objects billions of kilometers away and still nail the target to phenomenal accuracy. This supports our conclusion that the math is correct. The funny thing is about that is that the theory that you actually use to shoot probes at objects billions of kilometers away has already been displaced because very often you'll use Newtonian mechanics to make those calculations, and that's been displaced by general relativity. So, I mean, we actually know that the math isn't correct in the sense of like it is not like the theory isn't correct in the sense of describing the underlying structure of space time or anything like that. I mean, I guess you could say, well, it sort of provides an accurate way of systematizing and predicting observable phenomena, but and that's not like I don't think a particularly controversial point, right? Like we can use false models to make these sorts of predictions. So
Yeah, and I mean, one thing I wanted to bring up earlier, if your viewers were unfamiliar with it, was that they should, in relation to what he was saying about the universe obeying a set of rules and laws, is if your audience hasn't checked it out yet, they should check out your videos related to Paul Teller's work, and also the fuck's her name? Is it Nancy? The hell's her name?
Nancy Cartwright, yeah.
Yeah, Nancy Cartwright, yes. So Paul Teller and Nancy Cartwright, you do a video where you talk about both of them, and there's a segment in the video that's really informative about whether or not, tracking reality as it is even useful. So like when we postulate something like a law, we have to actually simplify it to such a degree to where it can help us. If we just leave it the way that it actually should be, it doesn't even help. It's like it sucks. You can't use it.
I'll put up a link to that video in the description, or videos. There might be more than one, but yeah.
Right. But I mean, that video is great because you realize that it seems like it's like the implication there is that it really might not be that it's reality that obeys a set of laws, but it's that laws are what we need to do specific things. And that if we followed the way that reality is, we would actually be inhibited from doing things. I'm not sure how that would fit into this guy's ideas here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and another problem, now that you've brought up Teller, I think it's worth pointing out as well that, like, look, even to talk about something like the sun or a probe, for example, like that involves a degree of idealization. Like there isn't So when I talk about like a probe, there isn't like one thing that I'm picking out. Like when I mean I act as though I act and talk as though that's like one single object with clearly defined boundaries. But actually, there's like 1,000. There's well, 1,000,000, an infinite really number of different ways of drawing the boundary around what counts as the probe. And so, you could just as well say that you've got like a trillion overlapping probes in one place. You don't say that because that would be incredibly complicated. So you simplify and say, okay, there's one object there. But like again, this is just this point that like we can take these sorts of perceptions that we have, and there are going to be multiple different different ways of describing them, different theories that like fit them, as it were.
Yeah.
Should I continue?
Yeah. Let's
Okay.
keep going.
So, this supports our conclusion that the math is correct. This in turn strongly implies that the universe is following its own rules and that we can figure them out. Now, of course, this is a very simple example and is not meant to be complete, but it gives you an idea of how this works. Now, think on this. The computer you are reading this on is entirely due to science. I think that's pretty questionable, actually. I don't know a lot about
Yeah,
the
what?
development of
Wait,
computing, but
what? Wait, what?
I have a very low
I mean,
credence in that claim.
yeah, like, so I mean, I've heard this pointed out before, actually, that like there's good reason to believe that that certain parts of the way that computing works today wouldn't wouldn't have occurred in the way that they had if it wasn't for certain bullshit that like Aristotle wrote at some point in history. Now you could see a lot of people will, and I've seen this done many times before, they'll say, well, Aristotle was just an early scientist, like, so of course science did. And it's like, or I mean, like, wasn't he the guy who thought like women had like fucking 70 teeth or some shit, or like
He thought that I believe, I could be wrong about this, I'm pretty sure he thought that a woman's womb will detach itself and move around her body at various points in the year.
right. Well, he's an early scientist. All right, give him a break. He's an early scientist. But another part of this is that this is why our audience really needs to watch the series Connections by James Burke, because you watch that series and then you read his writings and you start to go, oh yeah, it doesn't seem like computers were created by the scientific method. It seems that they were created by just like a bunch of weird happenstance, just like rolling into each other, and then suddenly there was a computer. Like like, I mean, in fact, he actually has a whole breakdown of the historical events that led up to the computer, and it's basically just people being selfish and being weirdos and freaks and doing a bunch of weird shit, to where that collection of weird things that people did over 1,000 years just winds, like, all those component parts come together, and then we have something called the computer. But why does science get to take the credit for? Because I
Wasn't one of it? I mean, so
it,
just to give an example, because I think I think I might be right about this. Wasn't part of it like the part of the history he tells of computing has had to do with like the punch cards that we used to track immigrants in like the 1910s and 1920s, like the immigration into the United States, right?
right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Of course, which is just, dude, punch cards are science. Tracking immigrants is science. Like, it's just weird. Like, why would science get the okay? So we have something that's derivative from all these different weird little facets of human existence, and then science always gets the credit. Why? Like what?
Yeah.
Because
I mean, and unless you just want to say so. You could, if you want, just define the term science so that it means something like, I don't know, solving problems, or like proposing hypotheses and seeing if the hypotheses work in some very broad sense of what work means. Like, but then then the trouble is that it just seems kind of like trivial. I mean, it just seems like basically any human activity is going to count as some sort of science. And
Yeah.
certainly that's a problem if you want to say that, well, science only makes one assumption, which is that the universe obeys a set of rules. Because
Or
yeah,
it's also a problem if you want to make a dividing line between science and so-called pseudoscience.
right, yeah,
It's going to be very hard to say that things are pseudoscience if like pretty much everything fits as science. Like and also a lot of creative activities are just totally irrational. So like a lot of so I hold a couple like technology related patents, and my process like of coming to them had nothing to do with the scientific method, and a lot of it was just doing weird shit. And once again, if science is defined as doing weird shit, then then what isn't science? Like fucking, it's like smelling girls' sneakers. Is that science? like, like, I don't know. Like, it's like if you want to say that, fine. I guess you have this really like flamboyant science or something. But I mean, that's cool and all, but it just kind of seems like then we're just talking about the whole of what humanity does, and not even humanity. It seems like, birds. Well, actually, let's just keep reading this because I think
yeah.
he's.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
okay. So the computer you're reading this on is entirely due to science. The circuits
What?
are the the circuits are the end result of decades, centuries of exploration in how electricity works and how quantum particles behave. The monitor is a triumph.
Wait. Just another thing. Like, you got to, everybody in the audience has to watch that show Connections, because when he talks about decades of people being interested in electricity, in Connections, James Burke shows you like what's meant by people being interested in electricity. It's basically people just being freaks. Like, they're not sitting there going, "Aha, I'm following the scientific method." Like, they're not doing that. They just have like weird hobbies. It's like, so he's acting like people were sitting there for centuries going, "I'm following the scientific method right now, and when I do that, I'm going to learn something about electricity." Like, that's not what anybody did. It's like, actually, they were just fiddling around and fucking around with shit. Like, so once again, is science supposed to be defined as just fiddling around and fucking around with shit? Like, is that what we're talking about? I don't know. Okay.
So the monitor is a triumph of scientific engineering, whether it's a CRT or an LCD flat panel. The mouse might use an LED or a simple ball and wheel. The keyboard uses springs, the wireless uses radio technology, the speakers use electromagnetism. Look around. Cars, airplanes, buildings, iPods, books, clothing, agriculture, plumbing, waste disposal, light bulb.
Books and science is taking credit for books and clothing? What the fuck? Wait. As far as I know, like, cavemen had clothing. Like, like what? Wait, what?
And buildings, didn't they have? I'm pretty sure, like there was a point in human history where, like, before science, where people were building things, weren't they?
Yeah, buildings. Wait, books. And what do I mean? Books to me seems extremely questionable, also. But clothing is maybe the most absurd. Clothing and buildings are the most absurd thing in the list. Wait, go through the list again. Let's see what's the craziest thing.
Okay, so cars, airplanes, buildings, iPods, books, clothing, agriculture, plumbing, waste disposal.
Yeah. Okay, agriculture is another completely insane one. Does he realize who the people were who developed agriculture? Does he realize who those people were? Does he know?
Yeah, I mean, so at this point, it does seem like we're basically just defining science as like just anything that humans do, like any kind of tool or way of thinking that humans have, which they've applied to solve some sort of problem. Like, it seems like we're defining it very, very broadly in that kind of way.
Right, but I mean, like, look, if you're talking about, I don't understand how when like a Mesopotamian guy builds something, how that's scientific, but like when a bird builds a nest, that's not. Like, what why wouldn't those just both be science? It seems like the bird is doing science by that definition.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, why not? Why not? Um,
Right. Okay. So bird. So
like, I don't.
birds, bees, chimps, scientists. I mean, even
um,
squirrels make nests. Squirrel
yeah.
scientists.
Well, I mean, like, look, bacteria can kind of like detect different like changes in the, in the sort of chemical composition of the water they're in, and then move away from toxic chemicals. So why shouldn't that count as science?
Right. It works. It works. It
So
works incredibly well. It's astoundingly accurate the way that it moves away from that shit.
right. I mean, actually, I mean, bacteria really do like that shit really does work because I mean, like they've like colonized the whole planet for 3 billion years or however long it's been. So I mean, that their
Right.
stuff
So
works
basically,
really
on
well.
this guy's definition, it seems like bacteria are actually the best scientists. It seems like people are actually really shitty at science and like amoebas. So we've basically devolved. We're proving the fucking answers to Genesis people correct. We've become morons, all right, who think that science only assumes one thing. Okay. All right, let's keep going.
Okay, so we have agriculture, plumbing, waste disposal, light bulbs, vacuum cleaners, ovens. These are all the products of scientific research. If your TV breaks, you can pray that it'll spontaneously start working again. But my money would be on someone who has learned how to actually fix it based on scientific and engineering principles.
Wait,
Oh,
why does science get to take credit for like what television repairmen do? Like, wait, what?
well, because they're fixing it based on scientific principles. It's based on scientific principles, Jax.
Wait, what?
The cool thing
Wait,
is that I'm pretty
it,
sure that
it,
by his standard, what we're doing right now is science, right? Because like we're
right.
using computers, and we're using computers with a particular goal, right? Like the goal is to trash this article, and like it might even be quite effective. I mean, we don't know. Like maybe people are going to really love this; they're going to respond to it really positively. In which case, like we're like brilliant scientists.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like, has this guy ever met any television repairmen? Do they really seem like scientists to anyone? Like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? All right, let's keep going.
Okay. All the knowledge we have accumulated over the millennia comes together in a harmonious symphony of science. I mean, it's not. It's. Are you surprised, Jax, that some guy who's like, oh yeah, it's like the universe obeys rules, and that's the assumption science makes is that the universe obeys rules. Are you surprised that that guy would think that harmonious symphony is like a positive metaphor to use for anything?
Yeah, I know, and it's like you can kind of tell too, like what kind of musical tastes these people have who write these articles. Like it's it's music that you would never want to listen to ever because they're always talking about how like the universe is analogous to some fucking like violin doofus, like some guy playing the violin, like this classical fucking music that's completely controlled. It's not experimental. It sucks. Yeah. No, I already know exactly what kind of music this dude
Yeah.
listens to, and it's not any good. All right, so let's keep going.
So, we're not guessing here. This stuff was designed using previous knowledge developed in a scientific manner over centuries, and it works. All of this goes to support our underlying assumption that the universe obeys rules that we can deduce. I actually don't know how that supports that assumption. I don't get it. So like we've done stuff that we've done stuff that works. Why does that mean that the universe obeys rules that we can deduce? Like what? Uh,
Yeah,
I don't. Okay.
once again, that the listener should go check out that video on Paul Teller and Nancy Cartwright because what that shows is that actually if we follow the way reality is, shit doesn't work. like it stops working. And only when we idealize it to like an extreme degree does it start working again. So it seems like all we're talking about is stuff working. But we're not talking about anything that has to do with what reality says. So why does this guy always keep referencing like look, reality's following its own rules? Like, no, it seems like we're following rules that are derivative from these idealizations that we have. And that does stuff that we like. We have certain values. We like specific things. When we see those things, we all get psyched and, blow a load or something. But it's like, okay, cool. So what? Like, all right, let's keep going.
Okay. Are there holes in this knowledge? Of course. Science doesn't have all the answers, but science has a tool, a power that its detractors never seem to understand. Science is not simply a database of knowledge. It's a method, a way of finding this knowledge. Observe, hypothesize, predict, observe, revise. That's also like, so this is, again, this is just such a kind of abstract description of what science is that it can apply to almost anything. Like, I think you'll find that, like mafia bosses use science. Like mafia bosses will make observations about, the activities of police. They'll come up with hypotheses about what the police are going to do, and then they'll act based on that, and then sometimes they'll revise their hypotheses. So it's like,
right. I mean, cats also figure out just the kind of way that they have to look at you to like get you to refill that food dish that you forgot about. And you're like, fuck, now I gotta refill this because this thing made this dopey looking face at me, and then I'm like, fuck, I gotta refill the food dish now. But I guarantee that this actually came from cats spending time with humans, looking at their stupid fucking head, and going, hey, I bet if I made this little face, this guy will give me food.
Mm.
And then it worked, and then we became slaves to cats. What I'm just saying, like, they did it. They did the science. They had a theory. They followed through on it, and now everybody owns cats. So now they have free housing. I mean, they live better than most homeless people. Cats.
Right. So science is provisional. It's always open to improvement. Science is even subject to itself. If the method didn't work, we'd see it. Our computers wouldn't work. Okay, bad example. Our space probes wouldn't get off the ground. Our electronics wouldn't work. Our medicine wouldn't work. Yet all these things do in fact function spectacularly well. Science is a check on itself, which is why it's such an astonishingly powerful way of understanding reality, and that right there is where science and religion part ways.
Stop a second. I always think it's funny how people just assume that they know what it is to look at something working.
Mm.
Like, how is it that people think that they actually see things working that isn't just another additional assumption about their perception? So meaning that when people see something work, they're already assuming that the way that they carved up reality was like the correct way to like draw the boundaries and the correct way to, put the grid interface there to where like when this object moves through here and then this object moves through here, like that counts as working. But all of that is contingent on like all these like Mariological assumptions, all these assumptions about the way that perception is and what I'm actually seeing. And in fact, if you push on any of them, you can realize that it's not really clear at all that you know how to see things working, because it's not even really clear that you see things. And not just like colored light.
But Jacques, you're saying this. I mean, look, you say that, but like, you're saying it to a microphone, and then that's carrying the sound across the oceans to another country, and it's being recorded, and so it's working. So like, what are you even saying? I mean, it's working right there. Look at it working so well.
Right. Well, yeah, but the whole point is that actually none of the story you just told is actually part of my perception.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I think it's a serious. So I mean, yeah. No, it's a serious point. It's like I actually think we don't even necessarily need to get into alternative models of perception to see this. If you just ask yourself, okay, like what grounds do I have for thinking that most of this stuff works spectacularly well? So the claim is that we got all this technology, and this technology was produced in a particular way. It's associated in some way by science, and this technology is like it's working. But I mean, I'm not really sure. Like, so again, even assuming the sort of standard, normal, conventional model of perception and the world, it's like in my own experience. I mean, I don't know. I have experience with like this particular computer. I can listen to what other people say about their computers, but there's a great deal of technology which, like, I know that technology sometimes fails, and like it sometimes fails kind of badly. I mean, like right now in the UK, we're currently facing potentially like blackouts, right? Like we might have blackouts this winter, and there have been plenty of cases of tech like computers that just stop working, and other forms of technology that fail, and sometimes when they fail, the consequences can be really bad. And I think in order to get to the claim that, like the majority of our tools work well most of the time, right? I mean, that requires like quite a lot of assumptions about, like, I don't know, trusting other people's testimony. It requires assumptions about your own ability to, I guess, judge what a particular thing is supposed to be doing and how well it's executing that function. And I mean, that's very hard when, like, actually, these fields are so specialized that I think you have to recognize that you're probably not in a position to actually make that judgment for
Yeah,
many
like
pieces of
if I don't lie
technology.
to myself, if I don't lie to myself right now, and I don't like pretend to know a bunch of shit that people told me a story about, it's like it. Well, I mean, it's going to get hard to use language at all if I strip all of it away. But like, if I just have a minimal amount of things I could say like, look, there's this rectangular object that glows, and a voice, like that, I hear a voice. um,
Yeah.
like but I don't know how that gets to any conclusion about like what's inside this object at this moment.
Mm.
Now you can say, oh well, you could break it open and look. Yeah, but actually if I break it open and I look inside, I don't know what any of this shit I mean, like, I've heard a story about like what it's supposed to do and how it's supposed to work, but once again, how many of these stories am I going to take seriously at any given moment, and how many should I be expected to take seriously? And
Yeah.
then on present evidence, almost none of the stories available. And so then I have to tell this story that's spread over time. Another thing, when the guy talks about things working spectacularly well, let's say all of this technology and shit leads to absolute disaster, and then we're all in this hell pit, and then we read this guy's article, and then we go, oh, okay, I see. So what this guy was talking about was just temporally, like, it was temporally bound in a weird way. Meaning, when people talk about science working spectacularly well, they mean like maybe like a 200-year period, but then when the nukes go off and we're all like in hellscape, then is that included in it working spectacularly well if that happens? Or like when we can't eat any food anymore, like is that because everything's poisoned? Is that going to be included in it working well, or is that going to just be like, oh no, that's not in fact, actually, in your recent video that you just released about anti-science, one thing that's interesting is, so science will credit itself with all these good things, but then when bad things happen, it'll say science is just a tool. But here's the thing: if something's just a tool, then you can't ever take credit for any good things ever. You, if you are going to make the just a tool claim, then science is just totally neutral. It's actually never done one good thing ever. It's never done a good thing. It's just sat there neutral as a tool. It's not. It doesn't. You can say people have done good things, but science is anthropomorphized science. The guy, Dr. Science or whoever the fuck he is, who's getting all his credit. Like, he hasn't done any good things. He's just a tool. Like, You know what I mean? It is kind of weird though that they'll pull that like that fucking NRA line about guns to talk about science. So science is like using the same like rhetorical tactics that the NRA uses, which is funny. But like, okay, they'll do that, but they don't ever realize that the follow-up is when you say that you can't criticize science because it's just a tool, it means that you also can't praise it. Like why can I why is it that I can't criticize a tool but I'm allowed to praise a tool? If I can praise a tool, I can criticize the tool. like what, they go hand in hand. Like why would I lose my ability to criticize something but not lose my ability to praise it? It's just really weird.
Right.
Sorry, did I seem insane right there?
No, that makes sense to me. I mean, like you said, yeah, that's. I guess if people want more on this, I mean, I have just recently done a video. Well, I guess we actually said that actually at the beginning, didn't we? This is kind of a follow-up to that. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So okay, So okay, let's keep going.
Okay, so yes, so we now have this conclusion: science is not based on faith, and that's in bold, and it has not like in italics. So I mean, this is legit. Science is not based on faith. Science is based on evidence. We have evidence it works, vast amounts of it, billions of individual. Again, actually, I mean, I mean, it's not clear at all that we have evidence. I mean, I have a particular amount of evidence, and it's not at all clear what the evidence that I actually have shows.
Right.
So maybe
I think okay. So you framed this in your last video as something about science being anti-democratic, but I actually think that there's a more substantial point. And I should say too that part of the video about science being anti-democratic, that the argument that's used there was something that Kane lifted from me, as he does many things.
Wait, did I? I actually don't remember that. I mean, I do lift a lot of things from you. I don't remember lifting that one from you.
Yes. Well, so I mean, in like 100 conversations we had, I said, that if you base things just on your perceptions, 0.0000001% of your perceptions verify the claims of the most up-to-date science.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right. This was something that I would tell you like every time we would talk. But so look, just I'm not trying to say that Kane's a plagiarist. Kane's not as bad of a plagiarist as science is. Science is the worst.
I don't care. You can call me a player. It doesn't bother me. I don't give a shit if I'm a plagiarist. Like I've never been bothered by that particular supposed academic sin. And I can say that now. It's like I'm not really in academia anymore, so I can say I just don't give a shit.
Yeah, right.
I'm like Tom. I mean, look, all the great philosophers stole all their ideas from like people who were less known. Kuhn stole from Michael Polanyi, and that's just how it works. All the great artists stole it. Jackson Pollock, he stole from Janet Sobel. It's like, whatever. Who gives a fuck?
Right, yeah, it's true. And like half of the continental philosophers and half of the existentialist philosophers just read Eastern stuff and just took all of it and was like, hey, look, it's new. It's like 2,000 years old. So So I was just going to say, the point you framed it, so you took an argument that I've often made to you and you reframed it in terms of science being anti-democratic and reliance on experts. But my original point when I would talk to you about this was actually about perception. So it was about something we were talking about earlier, which is if I think to myself...
Yeah, because I actually wasn't trying to make your point, but... Yeah.
Right. But you subconsciously said the argument in exactly the way that I've said it hundreds of times. You realize that now, though, right? I mean, like, come on, it has to be clear, right?
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever. See these dramas and more on the Possible Objects podcast. Okay. So, Yeah, so I was just going to say the original way that I phrased this argument to you was not about science being anti-democratic and reliance on experts. It was about perception. So, which was brought up earlier, but this idea specifically that, so take the most up-to-date scientific knowledge in all fields of science, and then ask yourself the question, what percentage of that body of knowledge that makes up all scientific fields, the most up-to-date evidence, what percentage of that evidence do your daily perceptions verify? And the answer is like none. like absolutely none of it. And don't say, see, now people make a mistake where they go, oh no, I like when I walk outside, I see the implications of gravity all around me. That's like, no, you don't. If you did, then people would have discovered gravity instantaneously. They would have just walked outside and knew the theory of gravity. But just like, hunter-gatherers would have known the theory of gravity if you could get it just via perception. So clearly, perception doesn't prove the theory of gravity. If it did, we would just instantly have had it. So no, that's not true. So now you count up. And the point of this argument initially, as I phrased it to you, was think about a working scientist. What percentage of their perceptions equals out to what percentage of the total body of knowledge that makes up all of science? Like all the things ever verified over the past fucking 600 years. Like what percentage of their daily perceptions verify what percentage of that total body of evidence? And the answer is 0.0000000.000000001%. Like it's like none. And this is for people who work in science. Like people who like that's their job. They go to work every day and all they did was science. And it should be obvious to everybody why even for them it's 0.00001%, and 99.9% of it is just trust. It's just based on trust. It's like I just trust it. I don't see it, I trust it. So I mean, wait, where? So now this had something to do with what this guy said. So maybe we need to back up.
So he said science is based on evidence. We have evidence it works, vast amounts of it. Billions of individual pieces.
We don't have. So the key word is we. We have vast amounts of evidence. No, we as in Kane, this guy who's actually writing the article, none of us have that evidence. We have perceptions which make up 0.00000000001% of it. So that's what we have. So I don't know who's the we he's talking about. By we, does he mean like all the combined first-person experiences of like everyone who ever verified something, and then like we just trust those?
I think
if he's saying that, then
yeah. I mean, I think it would be like it would be humanity, right? Like the evidence is because I guess the thought is that evidence is supposed to be like public, and so it's something that is in principle publicly accessible, but of course in practice, I mean. I don't put the vast majority of experiments that support the current scientific theories. I mean, I haven't performed them. Even working scientists haven't performed them. The thought is that in principle we could, but that's as good as you're going to get, right? But so I think the evidence would be held at the level of like an institution or a society. So it's like we, the collective, like this evidence just exists there in the collective. Rather than in the mind of any particular individual,
right? But as soon as you're starting to talk about some, collective we, first of all, you're starting to move outside of whatever empirical was ever supposed to mean. Secondly, you're now getting in a position where these people from the Answers to Genesis are going to be able to take claim over that collective we also. Because actually, it's not even clear. Like, look, what does the Bible say? There's donkeys, there's Jews, there's Egyptians. Like, yeah, there's pyramids. I've actually seen more of the shit that the Bible talks about. like Like I verified more of the. I mean, because their claims are actually far simpler. Their claims are just dumbass claims. There's donkeys. There's Jewish people. There's a fucking pyramid. Like these are. You could probably verify almost all the, like just the basic claims. Like they don't even say anything about like the way people are constituted, or the way donkeys are constituted, or the way that camels are constituted. They just say there's camels and donkeys and people, and apparently it's very easy to see all that shit. I go to a petting zoo and I've got most of the Bible right there.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, like, what in terms of like what any. I mean, I'm not trying to like. I mean, obviously, neither of us are Christian, and I think that we probably think that. I mean, I think Christian people are fucking fools, but I'm gonna say that I don't think that they really. I'm not sure that science has a more persuasive thing to say in terms of like how much your perception lines up with the scientific story. It doesn't seem like your perception lines up with the scientific story. It seems like it lines up with almost none of it. So if I'm just a person walking around taking my perception as the basis, it seems like I could just pick and choose. I could go, well, man, maybe I'm going to believe the Bible. Maybe I'm going to believe science. Maybe I'm going to believe the Quran or Hinduism or whatever. It just doesn't seem like if I go on perception alone, which is what, empiricism is supposed to aggrandize, then I don't know why I should favor science if I'm just basing it on. In fact, even the collective we, I don't think has the ability to verify most of this shit again. Meaning you'd have to have time machine. You'd have to get in a time machine. You'd have to go back. You'd have to like look at something a bunch of old fucking people 300 years ago did. But nobody's even interested in doing these experiments again. Like nobody even cares anymore because they already believe that it's established. So they don't like. What's the interest in re-verifying it? Then you're going to have experiments where to re-verify it, it's going to cost like $1 billion. And then where are people getting $1 billion from? Like, so there's so many problems. Sorry, I'm ranting.
Right. Well, that is what you said you wanted to do. This was supposed to be your rant. No, right. I was just going to say, it's like, I think that the way that we look at it is that a lot of science like builds on previous science. So you perform experiments and then you perform other experiments that build on the knowledge gained from those original experiments. So, I guess you might do some, I don't know, you have like a X-ray crystallography that reveals something about the structure of DNA, and then you can, use that to make other types of interventions into DNA and do further experiments on the basis of that original experiment. But then I don't know if it's that common for people to actually just go back to like the original experiment. I mean, once you've built up a certain theoretical structure and you're performing these later experiments, I guess you can say, well, look, the later experiments provide just as much confirmation to the theory as the original ones did, or maybe even more. So if I do like some X-ray crystallography that tells me the structure of DNA is a double helix, well then maybe further down the line I'm doing completely different experiments, and they might involve completely different instruments, but they can still reveal that the structure is a double helix. I don't know if that would be maybe a way of responding to this point about the collective evidence. Like do you see what I'm saying? So like we might not need to go back to the original experiments if we have like more reliable ways of unveiling the structure of DNA.
Why are we trusting that what we're seeing now is actually built on top of something? And it just doesn't work.
I mean, I don't think. I mean, I don't know if I'm necessarily trusting that. I think the claim would just be that we now have these new instruments, and these new instruments are revealing that, for instance, DNA is a double helix structure. I mean,
Oh, okay.
obviously we can, I mean, look, you can certainly question the inference from like particular images that are produced by instruments to uh, claims about the underlying structures and natures of the things that are being investigated. Um, but that would obviously just apply to, like, you can make that for any instrument. So
Right.
yeah.
So, okay, let's remember here, like the title of the article, right? Is science faith based, right? If 99.9999999% of my daily perceptions as a working scientist verify 0.00000000001% of the body of scientific knowledge, and the 99.9% is just taken on trust, how is that not faith? As far as I remember, the definition of faith is basically just like an extraordinary amount of trust. 99.9999% being trust seems like an extraordinary amount to me. Like, that seems like an extraordinary amount of trust. So it seems like science is based on faith. So I don't
Well,
like.
what he says is that it's based on evidence, vast amounts of it, and that I'm now quoting the article. That is the critical difference. Faith, as it is interpreted by most religions, is not evidence based and is generally held tightly, even despite evidence against it. In many cases, faith is even reinforced when evidence is found contrary to it. To say that we have to take science on faith is such a gross misunderstanding of how science works that it can only be uttered
Does
by
this guy
someone.
understand? Does this guy understand how many scientific theories are held tightly to, despite like evidence to the contrary, and that we just at all costs just want to keep the thing that's established because it's too annoying to move on to another paradigm? Does this guy understand how often that happens? To,
um,
like,
yeah, I mean, I think that there have been plenty of cases where and actually I don't think there's anything irrational about this. It doesn't strike me as being problematic to maintain a particular theory in the face of anomalies, in the face of like data that theory has trouble accounting for, because well, I mean, we know that sometimes it can take a while to uh, properly develop a theory, to develop different models for handling different situations, and um, like that's just something that happens in science. Um, so I think if there is a difference between religion and science, it wouldn't be found just in the fact that people can hold theories even with evidence against them.
I keep reading.
Okay. Um, okay, to say that we have to take science on faith is such a gross misunderstanding of how science works that it can only be uttered by someone who is wholly ignorant of how reality works. The next time someone tries to tell you that science is just as
Wait
faith-based
a
as
second. Wait a second. It can only be uttered by someone who's wholly ignorant of how reality works. Who the fuck knows how reality works? Where are these people who know how reality works? Where are they? Are they somewhere around? Can we get them? The fuck? That sentence is already presupposed that we know how reality works, which means that we don't even need to do science. Why would I need to do science if I already know the way reality works? Like, I wouldn't even need to do it. I would just say, like, fuck you. I know how reality works.
Hmm.
Like what? This guy says so many sentences where, like, the very next sentence that he utters, like, sort of erases the previous one or something. Like, it's really like he did that at the beginning of the article too, where he said, "That's absolutely false that we make an assumption. We only make one assumption." And it's like, wait, what? You just said it was false that we make an assumption now, but then we make an assumption. Wait, what? Like, you could only be ignorant. Wait, let me read this one. Okay. It can. It's such a gross misunderstanding of how science works that it can only be uttered by someone who is wholly ignorant of how reality works. What? I don't even know what that means. All right, keep going. Sorry.
So the next time someone tries to tell you that science is just as faith-based as religion, or that evolution is a religion, point them here. Perhaps the evidence of science may sway them, perhaps not. It is difficult to reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into. Um, I think it might be interesting for anyone who thinks that they've reasoned themselves into any position to, I don't know, take a look at Hume's argument against reason and see what happens if they play that out. But
Right.
yeah, but next time they get on a computer, maybe they'll take a slightly more critical look at it and wonder if its workings are a miracle, or are the result of brilliant minds over many generations toiling away at the scientific method. And
I
that
love his
is,
example. Yeah, that's the end of the
yeah,
article. But
that's the
like, I
end of
love
the
how first
article.
of all, his example is a computer, which is weird. But also too, so like this last line. The next time they get on a computer, maybe they'll take a slightly more critical look at it and wonder if its workings are a miracle or the results of brilliant minds over many generations. I'm not really sure why it's unreasonable to take it that the computer works via a miracle. I'm not sure why that's unreasonable. It seems better, actually. It seems like it's more fun. So, like, why shouldn't I? Like, that seems better to me because I want to have fun. And when I look at something and I'm just blown away, like baffled by, like, whoa, it's a miracle. I'm like just baffled by this computer. That's just way better than just looking at a stinky old computer that like some geeks made over 100 years. Like, I mean, like, I don't know. I like the first story better. Like, what's the reason I shouldn't? Does this guy have a reason? I mean, I know he didn't reason himself into his reasons, but that is okay. I mean, do you see that there's something like irrational about taking it to be the case that the computer is just works via miracle, like just boom, miracle computer.
Well, I
Like, why
think
not?
that uh, the thing is that like even if you take it that so I mean obviously he's taking it that there's something epistemically suspect about claiming the computer the workings of the computer are a miracle, but like you have to so if you're giving some sort of explanation for how the computer works, I mean the standard story is going to be a model that invokes, I don't know, like causality. There's going to be like some sort of cause and effect between the different components of the computer, in such a way as to produce particular, like things are going to happen inside the computer so that there's cause and effect between them. Well, I don't know. I mean, like to me, cause and effect is just like what the hell is that? What is that? That's completely mysterious. That seems miraculous to me if we're supposing that cause and effect is supposed to be like a part of reality rather than just like this kind of useful fiction we've come up with. Yeah, I mean it's completely baffling. So like I actually am not sure that there's even a distinction between the miracle explanation and the scientific explanation. It seems like maybe the scientific explanation itself is just invoking something that it would be quite reasonable to just call a miracle.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and then I mean,
like,
yeah, so I mean, I might be stretching, so what I'm going to say now, I might be stretching the what is typically meant by the word miracle, right? But so another thing that science assumes, I know this guy thinks it only assumes one thing, but it actually assumes like thousands of things, probably infinite things. If you play the problem, the criterion game, watch our other video, if you go down that rabbit hole, it probably assumes an infinite amount of things. But just stereotypically, I think it assumes probably thousands of things. So. But one thing that science assumes, one thing that's on this list, is that there's any like such thing as a successful reoccurrence of something. So meaning when I look at I look at a water bottle, then I look at another water bottle and I go, here's another instance of a water bottle. But it seems just as easy that if I wanted to be hyper detailed and about it, I could go, this isn't another water bottle. This is fucking just a totally new thing. This isn't a water, but like, look, this dent here, this thing, no, doesn't count. It's not a water bottle. Sorry. It's not another instance. It's not a repeat. It's not a replication of what I've seen before. Because, and I actually think that you can do this via being more sensitive to discrepancies, not less. So meaning, if you get hyper tuned into discrepancies between one thing and another thing, it just seems like there's just no instances of things repeating ever. It just doesn't seem like anything ever repeats.
Mm-hmm.
And if nothing ever repeats, then we don't have science. And also, if nothing ever repeats and everything's just new all the time, then the miracle thing sounds like that's right. It's like, yeah, just everything just pops out of nothing and it's just a miracle, like everything. But I'm not sure how that's seeing the world in a less detailed way and not seeing it in a more detailed way. Because remember, this is based on, if I'm hypersensitive to details, I can always say that something's disqualified as being a repeat instance of something. Do you see what I mean, or am I losing it?
Well, I think no, that makes sense. It's and I guess that connects to the point we made earlier that like I mean, even to distinguish something as an object, like I say, the sun. The sun is this object around which planets orbit. So I've got like the sun, I've got planets, I've got probes. That involves a kind of idealization. I think in the same way, when we identify that like something has taken place more than once, or there's been some sort of repetition of an event. What we do is we're at least doing some sort of abstracting, right? Like we're describing these events at a level where we can say that okay, they are like the same. Even though, of course, if you pay more attention to them, you can almost certainly find differences. So and that's kind of up to us, right? Like it's up to us whether we do that or not. I can take two bottles and I can say like, okay, these are instances of the same kind of thing, or I can just hyper focus on the discrepancies between them, and say that they're different. Like, I mean, why not? It's like
Right.
that's
But
just
actually,
up to
what I like about this, what I like about what we're saying here, is that this shows that actually science might be based on laziness. That actually science isn't a product of attention to detail, which they love to brag about. It's actually a product of just being lazy and just saying that things are repeat instances of other things because you're too lazy to assign a new label to everything you see. But it might actually be that reality has this like insane fecundity or whatever,
it.
where it's just always just spitting out new shit and we're just too lazy to see it.
This reminds me of there's a criticism that Darwin makes of Baconian induction. So, like the method of Baconian induction would involve basically just making a bunch of observations and then forming a hypothesis on the basis of those observations. Like that's where you start. Like you start with observations. And Darwin makes this point where he says, well, really science like can't start with observations because yeah, like I could just like walk out onto my onto a path outside and just like start observing the pebbles, and I could make a sort of catalogue of the exact differences between all the different pebbles I see, and clearly that would be completely useless. Like that would just be a complete waste of time. You wouldn't be able to do any science if you did that. Now I think it's probably true that you wouldn't be able to do anything resembling what we think of as science if you were to do that, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure why that would be a waste of time. I mean, like some pebbles are really fascinating and interesting, and I mean, maybe it seems to me like attending to the differences between pebbles is like there's great aesthetic value to be found in doing that. So like even from a kind of practical point of view, why not do that instead? But I think it kind of connects to this thing where it's like actually if you hyper focus your observations, then I don't know if we can do anything like science, right? But yeah, like it seems like it strikes me as a perfectly reasonable way of spending one's time.
Right. And who cares? Like, okay, so we drop science. Like, so what? We just get to bathe in this fucking universe of newness. Oh no, I'm gonna start crying. I'm gonna fucking cry myself to sleep because everything's new. Boo hoo. Like, what? That sounds awesome. This guy's end of the article sucks because everything's a fucking miracle, and he just didn't notice it because he's too lazy. Actually, it's not because he has all this scientific attention to detail. He didn't notice that everything's a miracle because he's too lazy. Which is why, by the way, if the audience didn't know, the guy who wrote this article lost a debate to Joe Rogan, like that he had on the Penn and Teller. So Penn Jillette had a podcast at one point, and he had Joe Rogan on to debate the guy who wrote this article about like moon landing conspiracies. And even Penn Jillette had to admit. So he had this guy on to embarrass Joe Rogan, and I'm not a Joe Rogan fan in any sense whatsoever, but even Penn had to admit at some point that like it completely backfired and the guy looked like an idiot. Yeah. So okay. Yeah.
I
wait.
just want to add, I mean, for anybody who's interested, this thing about everything being completely new. Myself and Jacques intend on at some point on our Possible Objects podcast to to put forward like a brand new idea, a brand new metaphysics. A kind of, well, I don't know if we should even say the name of it. I don't know if we should give anything away.
Yeah, we shouldn't give it away, but
yeah,
let's just say it's got
coming.
there's a little Mariology here and there, maybe. Right. Okay, wait. Let's go to
that on our podcast. Yeah. So you should.
Let's go to this other article. I have less to say about it, but I think it's good to read this one too. Okay, it's very short.
Now.
Okay.
All right. So now looking at this other article, scientific faith is different from religious faith. Not all beliefs are equal, by Paul Bloom.
Yeah. Okay. So Paul Bloom, as far as I remember, he's like Sam Harris's best pal. He hates empathy or something. He's like his whole book on why empathy sucks. Okay. All right. Let's read this, or you should read it because you've got that British fucking drawl.
If you want to annoy a scientist, say that science isn't so different from religion. When Ben Carson was challenged about his claim that Darwin was encouraged by the devil, he replied, "I'm not going to denigrate you because of your faith, and you shouldn't denigrate me for mine." When the literary theorist Stanley Fish chastised atheists such as Richard Dawkins, he wrote, "Science requires faith too before it can have reasons," and described those who don't accept evolution as belonging to a different faith community. Scientists are annoyed by these statements because they suggest that science and religion share a certain epistemological status, and indeed, many humanists and theologians insist that there are multiple ways of knowing, and that religious narratives exist alongside scientific ones and can even supersede them.
Wait, stop. Okay, so is it really fucking controversial that there's multiple ways of knowing? like what?
Well, I suppose it is, it is if you're defining science in the way that Mr. Plate did in the previous article.
Mr. Plate.
Right. Yeah.
I think his name was like Phil. I think his name was like Phil Plate too.
Yeah.
That's an unfortunate name. That's almost as bad as Pete Mancock.
Right.
Phil Plate, or what was it? I thought. Wait, no, his name. I forget. His real name is actually. We shouldn't be so mean to Pete because his actual name's Pete Extreme Boner.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, fuck. What was I about to say? Oh,
no,
yeah.
But
this thing about multiple ways of knowing.
Yeah.
I actually think if you take science in that very, very broad and almost trivial way, then there aren't going to be multiple ways of knowing. But of course, the problem with that is that on that view of what science is, it's not at all clear. I mean, it just seems actually quite obvious that theology is going to come out as just counting as a science, or right. Like various humanities, like history and anthropology.
Right,
like they clearly count
let's
as
say
sciences.
Let's say we don't take Plate's definition though. Maybe this guy Paul Bloom has a different idea. But the idea, I like how he uses the word insist. Many humanists and theologians insist that there are multiple ways of knowing. Like, oh no, multiple ways of knowing. They're insisting it. Can't they just accept that there's only one way of knowing shit? Like, what? They insist that there's multiple ways of knowing.
I mean, I'd be inclined to say that there's multiple ways of knowing things even within science. Like it seems.
Right.
Why would I mean? It just seems like we have, if we can know anything at all, and I know that you're not really keen on that idea. But I mean, I'm happy to say we can know stuff, and I'm inclined to think, look, there's all sorts of ways that people can form knowledge of the world. Like a scientist could use, I don't know, a telescope and make an observation through a telescope, or maybe she could use like a well tested model and then make a prediction on the basis of the model, and then use some other instrument. Like there's a whole bunch of different instruments. There's different ways of making inferences. I mean, so it seems like there's multiple ways of knowing even within science.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So let's keep going with this.
Okay.
So, multiple ways of knowing, and then we said, and that religious narratives exist alongside scientific ones, and can even supersede them. All right. So why don't you take it from there?
It is true that scientists take certain things on faith. It is also true that religious narratives might speak to human needs that scientific theories can't hope to satisfy. And yet scientific practices...
Okay, wait, so stop. So it seems like Paul Bloom is different than Mr. Plate. So Mr. Plate thinks that it's just obviously wrong that science takes anything on faith, even though he admits it in the first sentence of this article. But Bloom seems to say it's true that scientists take certain things on faith. So he's saying that right away, that they do. And then he said that it's also true that I guess religion can get people aroused in ways that science just can't get sexy enough to do or something. Or can't hope to satisfy. All right.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going.
I mean, like those like pictures of like Jesus nailed to the cross. I mean, like I jerked off to them every day when I was like forced to go to church.
Me
that was
so
so
I would
hot,
always
you know.
I had always had this intense visual of like what it would be to like lift up his little loincloth, when he's hanging there. Like let me just lift up the loincloth. Is he like getting super stiff from being super stiff on this super stiff fucking capital T or no, lowercase t. All right, yeah. So okay, all right, let's keep going.
Okay. And yet, scientific practices, observation and experiment, the development of falsifiable hypotheses, the relentless questioning of established views have proven uniquely powerful.
Wait, stop right there. The relentless questioning of established views, meaning why we spent $1 billion on the Higgs boson to just learn everything we already knew.
Yeah. Like literally just pumped what was it, like $5 billion, thousands of hours, like huge research teams to like get a printout of like some red dots on a graph, and it's like that confirms everything we already believed.
Right. Should we say relentless questioning of fucking established views? Yeah, right. Okay. Let's keep going.
Have proven uniquely powerful in revealing the surprising underlying structure of the world we live in, including subatomic particles, the role of germs in the spread of disease, and the neural basis of mental life. Religion has no equivalent record of discovering hidden truths. I'm inclined to think that religion has got like just as good of a claim as to discover hidden truths as science does. I don't think science discovers hidden truths. I think you can come up with like very powerful. The funny thing is actually about this is that like there's even plenty of scientists. I mean, maybe less so these days because I guess disciplinary specialization just means that scientists don't really engage with philosophical topics as much anymore. But like certainly if you look at like some of those early early physicists working in quantum theory, or if you look at like biologists who were initially developing the gene theory, like a lot of them were anti-realists. Like a lot of them took it explicitly. That was that another. What was that in response to?
I kind of had the feeling that you were going to say anti-realist at some point, and I kind of wanted to time it.
Okay.
Like said anti-realist, and it would just be like.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Okay.
So, but a lot of them were, a lot of them took it that that talk of these things, that scientific theories were tools that did not necessarily like reveal the hidden structure of reality or anything like that. Like that, for as far as they were concerned, that wasn't necessarily the point of doing science. Yeah, I mean, I like that seems to me a perfectly reasonable take on science, and so
It
from that point of
also
view,
seems weird. Like so if we start to if we take certain things like Buddhism to be a religion, I think actually there's a lot of psychologists who would claim that Buddhism legitimately discovered many things that are relevant about psychology. It like actually did. Like, so I don't know. Yeah, it depends on what we're talking about. I mean,
this is another context where there's this problem of like giving credit to things, because I think that so here's what I imagine people would say in response. They'd say something like, well, like Buddhism doesn't really get the credit for that because yeah, Buddhists came up with theories, but those theories were not like, they weren't confirmed. They weren't actually well tested. We weren't justified in believing those theories until, of course, the psychologists came along later. And, once the psychologists did their experiments and they had confirmation and
right,
they
but
had peer-reviewed
that
studies
conflict
of,
with
the
but
hedonic
that's going to
treadmill.
conflict.
Uh,
That's going to conflict. That's going to conflict with Dr. Plate's definition about how ants do science or whatever. Like, so yeah, if we go with Plate's definition of science, then Buddhists were certainly doing science.
right, yes.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
kind of funny. No. You're only doing science if you're a psychologist. Like what? Like, first of all, they're barely doing. I don't know. I don't even know if regular scientists think that they're scientists. I'm not even sure about that. Especially the evolutionary psychologists. Like, they're just. I'm not even sure that those people even believe they're what they're saying themselves.
Mm.
But like, but it's just I just don't understand. Like, okay, so it's all once again. So, but think about the guy's claim from earlier. If you say that Buddhists discovering things, psychological truths, didn't really happen because they were Buddhists and not psychologists. Well, then we can't say that science created buildings and clothing and agriculture,
Right.
because
Yeah.
on the same basis that like all that shit was created by people who were like believe shit that was completely nuts. So I don't know, like what? It just doesn't make any sense. So okay, I mean, but look, we're conflating what Plate said with what Bloom. I was thinking this guy Plate and Bloom. Okay, all right, let's
But yeah,
keep
I mean,
going.
so I think it's a reasonable point. It seems like a lot of there's a lot of discoveries about the world, right, that have come from other traditions, and so like what now, of course, you can say, well, look, those discoveries are now part of the scientific worldview, but it's not really obvious why science would get the credit for those. But okay,
Right,
yeah.
right. Well, it's because science is like the greatest plagiarist of all time. Really, that's really what it is.
So, um,
We're actually on our new podcast, possibleobjectpodcast.com. We're gonna have awesome t-shirts and merchandise. One of the greatest shirts that we'll be selling for this low price of $25 will be the "Science is a Plagiarist" t-shirt. Remember we were selling that, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm fine with yeah.
All
I'm
right, so
fine
maybe
with doing that.
we should pick up right after this.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. I think next time we record this, you need to make sure you eat loads and loads of beans beforehand, and
Right.
because like yeah, and right now I'm doing science because like I'm forming a hypothesis and I'm making a prediction and I'm gonna.
Wait. I think your prediction's about to come true.
Okay.
PossibleObjectsPodcast.com. All right. Okay. All right.
So, So why do so many people believe otherwise? It turns out that while science and religion are as different as can be, folk science and folk religion share deep properties. Most of us carry in our head a hodgepodge of scientific views and religious views, and they often feel the same because they are learned, understood, and mentally encoded in similar ways. In the first article that I ever published for The Atlantic, I argued that many religious beliefs arise from universal modes of thought that we have evolved for reasoning about the. This guy's an evolutionary psychologist. Okay. Um, from modes of thought that we have evolved for reasoning about the social world. We are sensitive to signs of agency, which explains the animism that grounds the original religions of the world. We are naturally prone to infer intelligent design when we see complex structure, which makes create. This guy is like totally full on evolutionary psychology. He's like using evolution. He's using evolution to explain like really specific theoretical developments.
He's also using like evolutionary psychology to explain why we believe in science, which is pretty funny. Okay. Because he was talking about like the different ways that our scientific beliefs are encoded mentally and how the religious beliefs are overlapped with them and encoded in a similar way, which means that both of them are subservient to like evolutionary psychology and just pile of bullshit.
But okay, so I'm just gonna so let's see how his theory works here. So it's we're naturally prone to infer intelligent design when we see complex structure, which makes creationism more appealing than natural selection. We are
By the way, that's such a weird. But where the fuck is the evidence that we're naturally prone to infer intelligent design when we see complex structure? Like, has that been proven anywhere?
Complex structure. It's such a strange thing because I don't think complex complex structures is that even. I wouldn't think of complex structures as being indicative of design. Like when I look at a mountain or a cliff or something, like the shape of the rocks and shit is really, really complex. But like when I look at the television in front of me right now, it's just like a black monolith. It's like the shape of it is just really, smooth, and it's like a square and it looks really simple. And so I don't know, like what I mean, if you were like if I was like walking out on the beach or something and I just saw, like a black monolith from 2001, I think I'd be more inclined to take it that is being designed than I would, like the rocks that are strewn everywhere. Like I don't think you infer intelligent design from complex structure.
No, dude, when I see a rock face, I'm naturally encoded. I'm encoded, dude. When I see a television that's turned off, I'm fucking encoded to start believing in God right there on the spot. Because of fucking evolutionary fucking psychology. So that's why.
We are
fucking worst theory of all. Okay.
We are intuitive dualists, and so the idea of an immaterial soul.
Wait! Look at this guy! Look at all this guy's claims. By the way, we're naturally encoded to see intelligent design. We're intuitive dualists. I hate dualists.
We're sensitive to signs of agency. I feel like this guy is like never ventured beyond the sort of like Western metaphysics, right?
I remember what his voice sounds like too, because I've heard him talk before. He kind of has a voice that sounds like. It's kind of like that, you know what I mean?
It's like what? I didn't hear anything.
Fuck, man! Damn, I ruined my whole joke by not farting into the phone properly.
Oh, I was gonna say
that he sounded like, and then it was gonna be like my ass making a noise. But then there was a malfunction, and actually that fill plate guy's wrong. His shit's not working.
Yeah, damn.
Damn, Phil
but
plate.
Like, so seriously though, I mean, I'm pretty sure that there's plenty of traditions, like pre-scientific and in other societies where people are not inclined to attribute agency to things, where people don't like infer design, where they're not intuitive dualists. I like that.
What?
Hello? Oh, damn. Can you still?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Did something go down?
Yeah, I don't know. I lost you for like a split second.
Oh, okay. No, I was just saying, I mean, I'm fairly sure that there are sort of other religious traditions that don't involve these sorts of claims. Um, so I mean, these aren't even like universal. So you know, yeah, like this explanation sucks. Like, what is it even trying to explain? Like, it's like you know.
All right, well, just keep reading.
Okay. Um, I've continued to develop this theory with my students at Yale, doing experiments with children and atheists and adults across a range of cultures, and I still think it is correct. Well, I might look like a complete fool for what I just said if he has actually been looking at other cultures. So, I mean, you know. But I have also come to see how incomplete this perspective is. There are many religious views that are not the product of common sense ways of seeing the world. Consider the story of Adam and Eve, or the virgin birth of Christ, or Muhammad ascending to heaven on a winged horse. These are not the product of innate biases. They are learned, and more surprisingly, they are learned in a special way. To come to accept such religious narratives is not like learning that grass is green or that stoves can be hot. It is not like picking up stereotypes or customs or social rules. Instead, these narratives are acquired through the testimony of others, from parents or peers or religious authorities. How does he think that science is acquired? Um, like, if not through the testimony of others? Um, Accepting them requires a leap of faith, but not a theological leap of faith. Rather, a leap in the mundane sense that you must trust the people who are testifying to their truth. I guess we've kind of like we kind of talked about this when we were talking about Mr. Plate's article, right? Um,
Well, I just don't. Isn't it kind of funny how this was supposed to be an article about whether science is based on faith, and it's just like this guy talking about experiments he does with kids? like what the fuck is he talking about? Like, it doesn't even seem like he's talking about the theme of the article anymore. Like, it seems like he's just going on a weird tangent. Like, what the fuck is he even talking about?
that's a good point. I'm not sure. Wait a minute. What is the theme of the article? Why scientific faith is not the same as religious faith? Oh, okay.
Right, he's just talking about himself.
Religious faith religious faith is acquired through the testimony of others, from parents or peers or religious authorities, and the leap of faith is that you have to trust the people who are testifying to their truth. Okay. Should I carry on?
Yeah, let's keep going. I'm still waiting for him to get to the point.
Okay. Many religious narratives are believed without even being understood. People will often. I'm just reminded of that quote from I think it's Richard Feynman, which he says, you know, if you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't understand quantum mechanics. But anyway, many religious narratives are believed without even being understood. People will often assert religious claims with confidence. There exists a God, he listens to my prayers, I will go to heaven when I die, but with little understanding or even interest in the details. The sociologist Alan Wolfe observes that evangelical believers are sometimes hard-pressed to explain exactly what, doctrinally speaking, their faith is, and goes on to note that these are people who believe often passionately in God, even if they cannot tell others all that much about the God in which they believe. Again, it would be, I think, interesting to take some of those people who, like, I don't know, who are wearing shirts that have, like, you know, Carl Sagan on them, saying like, yeah, like science wins, bitch, and like ask them to explain some of the basic details of like contemporary science. You
Yeah,
might find a similar thing.
I have a prediction that you would wind up with the exact same result. Like, it would be identical. You would just run into an identical. I mean, I don't know. I wonder if that guy's going to say that
Oh
actually in
yeah,
this
well, I
article.
mean, he might well. I actually, so I should say again, you know, look, I'm coming to this article for the first time. I haven't read this before, so you know, I mean, I might be just talking a load of shit. Like maybe he's gonna pull out a brilliant argument. Um,
I mean,
yeah.
if he does say what we were just talking about, it's just going to be him saying that it reduces to like evolutionary psychology, which is a pile of shit.
So
Just keep
yeah,
going.
why did you send me this article anyway? Have you read it?
Yeah, I read it. It's just I think he eventually gets to the point. There was just like a really big preamble.
Oh, okay. People defer to authorities not just to the truth of the religious beliefs, but their meaning as well. In a recent article, the philosopher Neil van Leeuwen calls these sorts of mental states credences, and he notes that they have a moral component. We believe that we should accept them, and that others, at least those who belong to our family and community, should accept them as well. None of this is special to religion. Researchers have studied those who have strong opinions about political issues and have found that they often literally don't know what they're talking about. Many people who take positions on cap and trade, for instance, have no idea what cap and trade is. Similarly, many of those who will insist that America spends too much or too little on foreign aid often don't know how much is actually spent as either an absolute amount or proportion of the GDP. These political positions are also credences, and one who holds them is just like someone who insists that the Ten Commandments should be the bedrock of morality but can't list more than 3 or 4 of them. So I don't know. Any comments so far, Jacques?
I mean, yeah, I think he's just saying what we said that was going to happen to the people with the Carl Sagan T-shirt.
Right.
So like that he's going over that. He does eventually get to the point. I do remember that. That's why I sent the article. So he's gotta
Wait a minute. I like how this is like just becoming like me reading an article of a guy rambling about and like the guy like isn't even talking about what he's about the point.
It's starting to seem like it's you who's rambling, which makes it funnier.
Right, yeah. That's true. I like this kind, like this is a kind of like cool sort of, it's almost like a kind of experimental art piece at a certain point, right? Like
it's just you reading the inane ramblings of Paul Bloom, right? And how he does experiments with kids.
Many scientific views endorsed by non-specialists are credences as well. Some people reading this will say they believe natural selection, but not all will be able to explain how natural selection works. Well, damn, don't I look like a fool for roasting Mr. Bloom earlier, and he's actually made exactly the point that I said he wasn't making. You set me up. This was a total setup, Jacques. I know what's going on here now. This is all part of like some plan to make me look like a complete moron.
Right.
Yeah.
See, Paul Bloom is like a brilliant chess player. He's always 10 steps ahead. You think that you've got him figured out, and then he says exactly what you think. That's my boy, Paul Bloom. Fucking piece of shit. All right, keep going.
So it turns out that those who assert the truth of natural selection are often unable to define it, or worse, have it confused with some long-rejected pre-Darwinian notion that animals naturally improve over time. There are exceptions, of course. There are those who can talk your ear off about cap and trade and delve into the minutiae of selfish gene theory and group selection. There are people of faith who can justify their views with powerful arguments. But much of what's in our heads are credences, not beliefs we can justify. And there's nothing wrong with this. Life is too brief. There is too much to know.
By the way, I don't believe that. I don't believe that people walk around with credences in their head. I don't have any confidence that people fucking walk around and go, dude, I've got these credences. Like nobody knows. That's like Pete Extreme Boner's argument about qualia quietism or whatever, when he talks about, regular people don't even know what the fuck qualia are. This is the same with credences. Like I've never talked to someone where they start talking about creed. No one talks about that. No one even talks about like having like, yes, I have a higher probability that I believe in God. Like that's not the way people talk or think, probably. Like, so I don't know what he's talking about, but yeah, that's just okay.
But anyway, life is too brief and there's too much to know and not enough time. We need epistemological shortcuts. Given my day job, I know something about psychology and associated sciences. But if you press me on the details of climate change or the evidence about vaccines and autism, I'm at a loss. I believe that global warming is a serious problem and that vaccines do not cause autism. But this is not because I have studied these issues myself. It is because I trust the scientists. Most of those who insist that the Earth is 6,000 years old and that global warming is a liberal fraud and that vaccines destroy children's brains would also be at a loss to defend these views. Like me, they defer, just to different authorities. This equivalence might lead to a relativist conclusion. You have your faith, I have mine. You believe weird things on faith. Virgin birth, winged horse. I believe weird things on faith.
Wait, stop for 1 second.
Yeah.
So isn't it funny how he goes, you would think that this would lead to a relativist conclusion, which is actually what it should lead to. It's like, and then he's gonna make a move here where, he craps out and then it doesn't lead to a relativist conclusion. But isn't it kind of funny? Like, he could just stop the article right here and go, yeah, relativism is true. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, he could, but like, wait a minute. We've got like, I take it that this is where the point comes in, and this is where, you know, this is where the checkmate is going to come. He's about to checkmate us. So, okay, there's a critical difference. Some sorts of deference are better than others. It's better to get a cancer diagnosis from a radiologist than from an Ouija board. I think it's pretty
Wait,
hilarious
wait
to
a
get a
second.
cancer
Wait a
diagnosis
second.
from an Ouija board.
Yeah.
I think that by my standards of what's better, it's better to get a cancer diagnosis from an Ouija board.
Also, too, like depending on the type of cancer you have, like let's say you have pancreatic cancer, you might as well get it from a Ouija board because you're not surviving either way. Like, who gives a shit? Like, if you get diagnosed with like pancreatic cancer, you're just doomed.
Yeah.
So, like, if the Ouija board tells you, if the doctor tells you, it's neither's going to be better. Like, what?
I mean, it's really not like I actually don't think it's like at all obvious, even when there are things that they can do to deal with the cancer that it's better. I know that I've spoken to people who are I like know about like cancer, who've worked in medicine, who like say that like they would not undergo like chemotherapy to extend life, for example. Like they would prefer, like they just wouldn't take that option, because
Right.
because it's fucking horrible, right? It has all sorts of really nasty side effects, and it might be better just to say, like, okay, instead of like making myself incredibly sick and having my and just feeling like shit constantly and not being able to eat and like my hair fall out, I'm just gonna enjoy, like and like maybe I'll only get an extra 6 months for undergoing this, brutal regime. Instead, I'm just gonna like have 2 months and enjoy myself.
Right.
Um,
Actually, I think it's really funny actually when anybody brings up like cancer treatments as a triumph of science because this is an area where they're clearly like failures. It's like they just suck. Like they're like you can always make a promissory note that like, oh yeah, they'll get it one day, but that's just an IOU. It's just a promissory note. Like it seems like it's an area where like they've done actually like a really shitty job. And when you look at the actual statistics, they extend people's lives by like fairly trivial like amounts. But then people are like, you can't say that. 3 years isn't trivial. It's like, yeah, 3 years is pretty trivial.
um, it's also funny, of course, because like I'm pretty sure that Ouija boards have like never actually caused cancer in the first place, but there's like plenty of shit that causes cancer that like if we're going to be attributing anything to science, there's like plenty of like cancer causing shit that science gets the credit for. Like
Right. A
science gets
lot
the
of it.
credit for influencing our diets. Science gets the credit for like uh, just saturating the world in microplastics, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, and then also, ironically, there's the medical treatments that probably cause cancer, like X-rays and things. Like when we X-ray children's heads 4 times for no reason, and then they wind up with a brain tumor, and they're like, where'd that brain tumor come from? Could it have been the X-rays on their fucking head? Yeah, so like it's just, and then and then yeah, so all right, we'll just keep going.
okay. It's better to learn about the age of the universe from an astrophysicist than from a rabbi. Like, wait, why? Like, why is that? Why is that better? Like, who gives a shit? Like, at least with the cancer thing, I can see why that's something that, like, I don't know, makes a practical difference to people's lives. But like, what fucking difference does it make? What view I have about the age of the universe? I mean, if it's just me, if I'm just like an average person, and I think that the age of the universe is like, I don't know, if I think the universe is 6,000 years old, I mean, like, so what? I don't actually know. I mean, rabbis don't believe that, do they? Rabbis, that's Jewish. I'm not sure what Jews think about the age of the universe. Uh, but okay. The New England Journal of Medicine is a more reliable source about vaccines than the actress Jenny McCarthy. these preferences are not ideological. We're not talking about Fox News versus The Nation. They are rational because the methods of science are demonstrably superior at getting at truths about the natural world. The funny thing is
How
about
is it?
that is
How
like
is
you
it?
have
Wait,
to.
wait, 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 wait. How is it demonstrably superior when it comes to like something like the age of the universe? They don't even know if this is the only, there's one universe or fucking 100 of them or fucking trillions, or they didn't know any of this shit. So depending on what you mean by universe, it seems like we're totally clueless about that. And also, sure, you can have a theory about how old it is, but you're never going to come in contact with that ever. You're just going to be sitting there doing what the guy made fun of earlier, which is just taking people's word for it, which this guy was supposed to say, like, look, people just start spouting out economic theories and don't know anything about it. Well, yeah, that's what you would be doing about the age of the universe. You'd just be believing some shit some dude told you.
Yeah,
Like, okay.
it's
Like,
interesting that he says like that these preferences are not ideological. And the reason why they're not ideological is apparently because the methods of science are superior at getting at the truth about the natural world. But why should I care about what the truth is? Like that's clearly an ideology, right? Like I might have like some set of values where I value the truth. But so like I could accept that science is the best way of getting at the truth about the natural world. But then I could just say, yeah, I don't give a shit about getting at the truth, right? Like that just doesn't matter to me. And why should it? There's loads of stuff that matters that like just doesn't have anything to do with like the truth about the natural world. Maybe I just want to like I don't know, uh, hold beliefs that I think are cool, or hold
right.
beliefs that are going to help
Yeah,
me to attract
the
women.
The
Like,
Ouija
you
board
know,
would be much better at doing.
yeah, like
Right.
I mean, so
Yeah, wait,
you
Kane,
don't have
Kane,
to care
hello?
about
Hello.
truth.
Wait, can you hear me? Hello,
Yeah,
hello.
hello.
Can we pause this recording? Is there any way to pause it and pick it up?
Yeah,
Like, I just realized I have to go.
record. Okay then, so let's continue after we were interrupted because apparently Jacques had like much more important things to do than talk about this article written by some guy from like 7 years ago. Like what the fuck is that? Abandoning the criticism of science for like whatever the fuck else it was you were doing.
Well,
So we're now getting right back into
I
it.
liked, I liked how I actually had to go for probably about 40 minutes, so you just wound up reading an article to yourself. So, I mean, like I was trying not to go. I mean, I had something to do, and then I was like, man, it's just become this weird art piece where Kane reads to himself. And I thought it was funny how you committed to doing the American accent the whole time. But it's kind of weird because I feel like a lot of times when British people do an American accent, they wind up sounding like quasi-Australian.
I
Like
don't
it's
think
like,
was I trying to. I don't remember even trying. I thought I was trying. I don't know what accent I was trying to do. I could try to do
something.
an American accent for the rest of it.
Right. Okay. So we left off on a kind of paragraph like this. So we're not talking about Fox News versus the Nation. They are rational because the methods of science are demonstrably superior at getting at truths about the natural world. Why is it so hard for people to accept or to understand that all that's demonstrable is that something is better at getting at some concept of what works, and there's many concepts of what works. So we might have one concept of what works, and something might be demonstrably good via those specific game rules. But what does that have to do with the natural world? Which by natural world, I think that he means the word reality. Like it's demonstrably better at getting at the truths about reality, because I assume that he just equates natural world and reality, considering the rest of the article. So
Well,
I just don't
maybe.
understand why is it so but why is it so hard for people to like tolerate this concept that maybe all we get is useful stuff under some definition of useful? See, I don't even want to grant that it's objectively useful. I want to just say it's useful under a specific definition of useful, maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, I take it that any kind of claim about something being useful has got to be evaluated relative to, goals and then standards for meeting those goals. And I mean, I like there's, I don't think there's going to be an objective facts of the matter about that. I mean, I know that a lot of philosophers are going to say there's an objective facts of the matter about that, but like we can just put. I feel like at this point in the conversation, and given how like the type of person who will have listened this far, I think we can just put those philosophers to one side and all agree that that kind of view would be bullshit. So, right?
Right. Well, I hope so. I think that probably a lot of people actually in your audience, given the comments on some of your videos, it seems like a lot of your audience are actually idiots. Because as far, let me just try to alienate your audience as much as possible, so that they'll come watch the Possible Objects podcast that they don't want to watch because I'm involved.
Look, there is. Hey, look, sometimes it can be fun to like hate watch something. Okay, so maybe we'll get some hate watchers. Sometimes, like a piece of music comes on the radio, I fucking hate it, but I think I'm gonna listen to this just so I can enjoy hating it. And I mean, and that's an example actually of how slippery this concept of utility is, because like something can just by any kind of conventional standard, it can utterly fail completely to achieve what it's trying to do. It can fail to meet the conventional standards, but then I can love it for precisely how bad it is and how it allows me to hate something.
I think it's funny how so secular scientism type people and personalities, STEM Lord personalities, I think it's interesting how they hate the idea of anthropomorphizing reality, and they pretend like they're really on board with the Copernican principle. Yet I don't know where they get this idea that the universe itself has goals. I don't think it does. And if the universe doesn't have goals, then we're the ones who have them. And if we're the ones who have them, then it seems like we're not talking about rational because the methods of science are demonstrably superior getting at truths. It seems like we're talking about a method that might be better at getting at some specified goal. But what does reality have to do? What does reality have to do with having a goal? Or things being useful? Does reality have something to do with that?
Do you know, there's actually another kind of thing along the same lines, I think, where a lot of them seem to assume that reality has aesthetic standards, or reality has aesthetic tastes. Because how many times will scientists say, well, this theory must be true because it's just so mathematically elegant, or because it's it's simple, or it's the equations are so beautiful, the symmetries are so beautiful, as though reality has
I've already proven that the Milky Way galaxy's favorite albums come from the band Supertramp and Electric Light Orchestra. What? The fuck are people talking about? Yeah, I know. The universe cares about symmetry. Did you hear about that? Apparently, reality is really concerned about things being symmetrical. All right. Okay, so let's keep reading.
I don't want to fetishize science. Sociologists and philosophers deserve a lot of credit in reminding us that scientific practice is permeated by groupthink, bias, and financial, political, and personal motivations. The physicist Richard Feynman once wrote that the essence of science was bending over backwards to prove ourselves wrong. But he was talking about the collective cultural activity of science, not scientists as individuals, most of whom prefer to be proven right, and who are highly biased to see the evidence in whatever light most favors their preferred theory. I actually think that's he's right about a lot of that.
Right. But now watch, he's going to backtrack on all that in the next paragraph.
But science as an institution behaves differently than particular scientists. Science establishes conditions where rational...
I just want to say something. So this sentence here. But science as an institution behaves differently than particular scientists. Wait, okay. So what is the institution of science made up of? Like, what makes it up? What's the constituents of it? Oh, it's just a bunch of scientists. But like what? Okay. So meaning its constituent parts are a bunch of like selfish douchebags who want their theories proven right. Um, so so am I supposed to get from this that if you add up a bunch of douchebags who want their theories proven right, that you wind up getting like some sort of selfless saintly behavior or something? Like what?
But the other thing is that when you look at science as an institution, like at that point, it's like culturally situated, and it has like all of these influences from other institutions as well. So like when you move to so I mean, on the one hand, right, I think I get, the sort of point he's making here, right? So it might be the case that you have a bunch of people, individuals who are acting selfishly, but then maybe those individuals are following particular rules or something which allows them to be more reliable. Like, I don't know, there's like a method of peer review, for instance, or, there's certain standards for catching fraud. But at the same time, science as an institution is influenced by, the military. There's like loads of links between science and the military industrial complex, right? It's like it's tied up with, the government. And like also just like once you get sort of groups of people, it's not like there's just going to be an individual who has a bias. There can be a whole group of people who have a bias, and that might actually serve to kind of suppress particular views being expressed by individuals who might actually have, alternative ideas, let's say. So, I don't. I mean, like, you can't just. Yeah.
Also, I was going to say, man, I'm struggling to remember the name of this paper, but I think I'll remember it after the call's over, and we can link it in the description. Like, I'll find it after I get off the phone with you. But there was a paper I was reading where they lay out a very compelling case that basically, like, scientific journals are completely anti-science. Like, meaning the journal process, like the editorial, like, and it's basically totally unquestioned. And apparently it's horrible. And then they're trying to figure out in this paper, why is it that this process has never been updated? So like our computers have been updated, like all this other technology has been updated, but basically the editorial process for, submitting stuff to the scientific academic journals, and it's just still like basically like archaic and like a piece of shit. And no one questioned. And apparently the paper goes to it goes to through a lot of links to show that the trust in the journal process and the editorial process is basically faith-based. Like, it's just people just assume. I mean, it's not like there's like all these studies showing how great the editorial process is.
Well, actually, I mean, like, there's plenty of studies now that are, raising concerns about things like the replication crisis and how, that's produced by kind of the publish or perish culture, or it's a result of, kind of just inappropriate, like, kind of biases and stuff at the level of peer review, like at that institutional level. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's keep going with this. So we left off on, but science as an institution behaves differently. That's where we go.
Science establishes conditions where rational argument is able to flourish, where ideas can be tested against the world, and where individuals can work together to surpass their individual limitations. Science is not just one faith community among many. It has earned its epistemological stripes. And when the stakes are high, as they are with climate change and vaccines, we should appreciate its special status.
Okay, so here's my favorite thing. I love how the last sentence of this article is basically another reminder of the truth of my thesis that I've presented to you many times, that really the argument boils down to, aren't you scared of dying? Aren't you really scared that shit's going to happen, that you're going to be in pain and die? Like, that's really like meaning that the argument ultimately falls back on, you're really scared, aren't you? like, wait, that's supposed to be the big rational appeal? Is the appeal to me shitting my pants and being scared of climate change and like viruses?
And
Like,
I also like how it's you're supposed to be scared of something that science has played a significant role in actually causing climate change.
right. And remember, Dr. Plate from the last article. He includes agriculture as something that science invented, and it's important for the audience to understand that if agriculture had not been created by science, as Dr. Plate says, we wouldn't have the flu or the common cold or these diseases. These diseases are all derivative from us basically breeding animals in such a way to where we're in close proximity with them all the time, and then they transfer their diseases to us. And like, there's a lot of evidence that shows that we would have never had the flu or the common cold if it wasn't for our proximity to animals and via animal agriculture. So thanks, science. Thank you, science. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Dr. Plate. Dr. Plate.
So what exactly? I'm going to be honest with you, right? Like, we recorded the first part of this video yesterday, and I'm now coming back to this article again after a day. What was the argument in this article for why science is so great? Like, what exactly was it? I actually can't even remember what the argument was. Do you remember?
Because doctors are better at diagnosing cancer than Ouija boards. I think that was the big argument.
Oh, okay. Right.
I love to this sentence. It has earned its epistemological stripes. See, I actually think that because of things like the problem of the criterion and other skeptical issues, that things just are like, everything's kind of at like an epistemological equilibrium. Like, things don't have special epistemic stripes. Like, those all depend on us first valuing the same things. If we don't agree on our values and we don't have overlapping values, then nothing has special epistemic status, because the other person just doesn't grant any of the same shit. So, like, and then the only way to present why your epistemic model is superior is to just beg the question for it over and over and over again. So basically, the way that I say that my epistemic model is superior is by just talking about how great I already thought it was.
Okay. Well, hang on a minute, Jax. How do you know that isn't like like the right way of showing that something is epistemically superior?
What, by begging the question for it?
Yeah.
How do I know that that's not the right way?
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't have to know. I don't have to know or not whether it's the right way. I can just sort of have a sense that, a car salesman's talking to me or not. Like, it's sort of like everybody. I mean, if people are familiar with what it's like to have a car sold to you, there's a sort of,
But maybe look, maybe that's the way it works. Maybe science is the best car salesman. And like that's what it is for it to earn its epistemological stripes. Like, science has got like a little certificate because it's sold the most cars.
Once again, all you're gonna do to say that science is the best car salesman is to talk about the reasons you already thought it was the best.
Actually, Jacques, like, yeah. I think that your criticism is actually self-undermining because look, science is what actually made the cars. You couldn't even have car salesmen if it weren't for science.
Exactly, and actually, I don't know if you know, but Dr. Plate says that car salesmen do science when they scam you, because they observe what kind of scamming behaviors have worked in the past. And they make an inductive inference to the future about what scamming behaviors will continue to work, and they implement those successfully, thus science. Now, I like how yesterday you said that it's like you used the example of mafia bosses. You like mafia bosses do something, but that's a good example. Like they observe a lot of things. And they take those observations very seriously, because think about it. The stakes are a lot higher for mafia bosses than they are for scientists.
Yeah.
If you make a mistake as a mafia boss, that's way more serious than making a mistake as a scientist. So, like, your mistake means that you're probably going to die. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I'm just saying, I don't buy this shit about special epistemic stripes. That only, once again, that's content. In fact, if we listen to Paul Bloom, its special epistemic stripes, its special epistemic status is dependent on us being really scared of dying and being scared of getting hurt. So if we're scared of dying and getting hurt, then maybe it seems like it's special. But if you're not scared of those things, then it doesn't do shit. Like, because then I can just use Ouija boards to diagnose my illnesses. I can do whatever I want because I just don't give a shit. Like, meaning I think that the gist of his argument in this article is, aren't you really scared of this? Like, which, by the way, that's the main argument of most religion, is aren't you really scared of it? Like, and here, trust us because aren't you scared? And then people go, yeah, I am really scared. I'll trust you. Same argument. It's the same fucking shit. I don't know if people notice that that's a similar. It's a similar thing that both science and religion do, is they fearmonger at you. And the reason that like this whole thing about trust the science as a thing recently, I'm not going to make a comment about vaccines or anything. I'm just going to say that.
We're definitely not going to make any comment about that because this video is going up on my YouTube channel. And I don't want my channel to get taken down.
Right. But so I'm not going to make a positive or negative statement about vaccinations. All I'm going to say is that this phrase that got pumped into the news cycle, trust the science. It's like all that's saying is, aren't you really scared? Aren't you really scared you're going to fucking die when you get the disease? And then people go, yeah, I am really scared. And then, and then they just trust this methodology. But I don't see how that's different than what religion has been doing for, religion had that down, scaring the shit out of you and saying like, look, if you don't trust us, you're going to fucking be tortured. Aren't you scared of demons? Aren't you scared of pitchforks? Aren't you scared of fucking little horn guys? And people are like, whoa, yeah, I am really scared of that.
So I can imagine somebody, defending science coming back here and saying, well, look, maybe in both cases we are scared of dying and that's why all this matters to us. But, in the case of science, we can show that if you have vaccines, for instance, like if you take the vaccines, then the probability of you dying decreases. So they successfully achieve the goal. The goal in question is don't die, right? We're terrified of dying, so we don't want to die. But science is better than religion, allowing us to achieve that goal. Like
no, it's not. No, wrong. Wrong. Because science makes a metaphysical assumption that death exists, and it has no evidence for that.
Oh, damn. I mean, damn, okay.
Wrong. Sorry, you have to assume that there is such a thing as death, and that's not just a folk psychological label that we like glommed onto by accident, and then just said like, yeah, people die. Once again, I've talked to you about this before, but
actually, can I ask? I mean, so on your view, and I mean, actually, now I'm thinking, I mean, this might not make any sense to the listeners because we haven't really explained your view here in any detail. But would it be the case that science makes that assumption? Because, like, does, for instance, physics, like, I mean, physics doesn't seem to me to talk about any kind of. It doesn't seem to talk about like persons or any sort of biological process or any like folk psychology. Like physics just talks about particles and shit,
Exactly. So but the whole point of your argument was that science shows some sort of special prowess at fixing a problem. If there's no problem according to physics, what's the special prowess that science has in regards to it?
Well, okay. I mean, I guess we'd have to be stepping outside of science in order to make that assessment then. So yeah, we'd be saying, okay, we're taking it that death exists, and then we're like using scientific theories and scientific methods to help ourselves avoid this problem of death. But it wouldn't necessarily be that science itself says anything about death. Although I guess, I mean, like biology probably does, but I don't know. I don't think physics really does it? But yeah,
Right, but then, what's the claim that science is doing something significant if they don't even talk about the thing that's supposed to be significant? Like, so if you're isolating science to physics, then you're saying physics doesn't talk about this thing.
mm,
Okay, so if it doesn't talk about it, how is it making a special claim to doing something good about it?
right, yeah,
Like, it doesn't even address it if we're just talking about physics. If we talk about biology, then my original point is going to stand, which is that our taxonomy seems like it didn't need to include death. We could have just called what we typically assign as death like just a different kind of growth phase, and just not had like an interest in it.
right,
We could just been like, oh, that's cool, yeah, babies, children, teenagers, adults, old people, rot person, which is it's just a way of growing outwardly. It's a spread growth, and we keep tracking your growth, and then we track your growth, your symbiotic growth, and inside the maggots and all that. So like, I don't know. So what? That could have been our taxonomy instead, and then nobody would be worried because everybody would be like, "Oh, I can't wait to get to my maggot phase." So I don't know. It depends on our interests.
mm,
Like that's what I mean. So even if science wants to make that claim, it's once again going to fall back on this subjective value shit, where we have these goals, we have this taxonomy, which informs these goals, and then science is good if we accept all that crap. But if we don't accept all that crap, its only strategy it has going for it is, aren't you scared? Aren't you going to wet the bed? And it's like, no. I mean, I'm not, but I mean, I know many people are. So of course, science is going to be attractive for scaredy cats who wet the bed. Yeah, sure.
okay. I don't know if that seems like a good place to wrap it up. Then, do you?
You like that as a note to end it on? Well, we should
Yeah.
read Paul's biography. Paul
Okay.
Bloom is a contributing writer for The Atlantic. He's a professor of psychology. No surprise, by the way, that he's a professor of psychology. And I'm pretty sure he loves evolutionary psychology.
Well, he did give an evolutionary explanation for like how we developed. What was it like? Dualist theories of mind.
Oh no, he said that we're innately attracted to it, and we're also like innately some other completely spurious shit. I forget what he said, but he said that we were like innately a bunch of weird stuff that I don't ever remember signing on to, but okay. Yeah. So he's a professor of psychology at the University of Toronto, and the Brooks of Susan Reagan Professor Emeritus of Psychology at Yale University. His latest book is what is probably not his latest book because this article's 8 years old. It's a fucking old article. His latest book at that time was The Sweet Spot, The Pleasures of Suffering and the Search for Meaning. That's kind of funny that he wrote a book about the pleasures of suffering, yet he gives an argument for why science is great based on avoiding suffering. So this is kind of, that's ironic, but okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess let's end the recording now and go listen to the Possible Objects podcast.
Yep.
Everywhere soon.
Possible
right?
Objects podcast. Yep. That's coming soon.
First interview with Pete Extreme Boning.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. All right.